Hello, good evening. You are very welcome to Ovale's 8th Winter Warm, wherever it may be that you are joining us from. Have you here? It's been a great festival so far, which will now continue with tonight's reading from poets James O'Leary, Noir Al-Sadir, and Robert Sullivan. I'm going to introduce each poet before their individual reading, and first up tonight we have Cork poet James O'Leary. His chapbook There Are Monsters in This House was published by Southword Editions in 2018. He was selected for the Poetry Ireland Introduction Series in 2017 and received the Poetry Ireland and Cúirt bursary in 2016. He has written and directed many short plays and poetry films. His poems will appear in A Wild and Precious Life, a Recovery Anthology in April 2021. And we're delighted to introduce James O'Leary.
Thanks so much, Shauna, for that introduction, and thank you, Paul Casey, for organising the festival. I'm delighted to be here. So I'm going to read some poems, as you've no doubt gathered by now. So I will start with We Now Share Pots and Have Matching Dressing Gowns. We are tying our lives together, and I didn't know not to put tins in the microwave. I mistrusted salad and asking for help. I wasn't even sure if elephants had knees. Lately, I've been hanging out at garden centres, finding grey hairs and placing classified ads. Looking for fellow misanthrope. If interested, leave me alone. More than anything, I want to be alone with you. Stubbing our toes on boxes and unpacking and unpacking. And you are not the woman of my dreams. If you were, you would be made of spiders and spit teeth. So this next poem is about going to a treatment centre for drinking. I was in a couple of them actually over about 6 months, and then halfway house for another 6 months, and all because I liked a few drinks, just enough to obliterate reality most days for years on end. That's all. And sure, I would occasionally wake up in a hospital bed or a jail cell, and I was hurting everyone around me, and my life was completely unmanageable. But these people at the treatment centre wanted me to stop drinking. It seemed a bit much at the time. Admitted. IV lines, doctors, benzodiazepines, flowing walls, dancing jesters, spiders under my skin. 72 hours sobriety is required before entry. Bring comfortable clothes, no phones. Pre-treatment group meetings, hand tremors, drinking dreams. There will be room searches. Someone brought vodka injected oranges once. Piss tests, soup for lunch, war stories, roll-ups. How many of you think you shouldn't be here? Form 2 lines. Librium dosage arguments, screaming in the adjacent field. Are you manipulative? No. X Factor, endless tea, share and tell until clean. It feels quite strange looking back to have an X Factor reference in one of my poems, since it was a show I never deliberately watched, but it was the month of December when I was in the treatment centre, and we had maybe an hour or so to watch TV in the afternoons, or in the evenings rather, and yeah, everyone was wild about X Factor, so that's what we watched every night. So I'll read the opening poem of my chapbook, There Are Monsters in This House. The poem is called It Gazes Back. I'm a closet optimist. One day I'll come out to my family and friends as hopeful. Imagine it now. This is not how we raised you, honey. Your joyful acts are so unnatural. Please don't tell your father. He wouldn't understand. I want to tell them they are not their mistakes. They are not their mistakes either. Oh, and help was on offer from the family doctor. What is your complaint? Can I take a closer look? You look concerned. When you gaze into the abyss, do you feel A, numb, B, frightened, C, like you want to hold on to a stranger? If symptoms persist for more than 2 weeks, stop gazing. And doctor, what about you? Do you have a scar where the umbilical cord was attached, proving one person once loved you? Rather, at least one. I'm an optimist. So that was the opening of this chapbook. I'm actually writing a new chapbook at the moment, and this is the poem that could potentially be the opening poem for that chapbook. Every day is an opportunity to pretend to start over. When my friend asked, "Do you think I'm mental?" I said no. You hesitated, he said. I could have sworn I hadn't, but this fog will not lift. I fell out of love a year ago and became slower to think that I know what I know. Every road is paved with incremental compromise and getting narrower every day. Anyway, when my friend asked, "Do you think I'm mental?" after fixing iron bars across every one of his windows, I said no. So speaking of barricading yourself indoors, this poem is about the time armed response showed up outside my house, which I didn't know at the time. And I was in the shower one day, he came in. Wearing a towel, dripping. I opened the bathroom door to see 3 Gardaí, one leave my bedroom looking dead at me. I say hello. He asks my name. I'd like to pretend I had a wisecrack ready, but they were serious. Their job had brought them to me, and yes, I agree. Mysteries need to be solved. Why do my neighbors move furniture nightly at exactly 11:30? Why does my lover close her eyes while brushing her teeth? Why do encounters with authority always begin or end with me shirtless? They tell me I've been under surveillance for 6 months. I find comfort in this, that beyond my lawn of white daisies, well-trained, neatly dressed professionals have watched over me since Christmas. I hope this continues. And though I can't tell what I've done, looking at my long dead appliances, worn out furniture, window frames mended with packing tape, they have a warrant. They have evidence bags. They have gone to such trouble. And so I offer Earl Grey and my best biscuits, the chocolate ones. And from the shower to the bath. I didn't realize until I was looking at these poems again how many of them take place in enclosed spaces, even though I wrote them all back when I could have left the house if I wanted to. The big rain. You have been eroding. I don't know if the same storm outside my window is pressing against yours. To escape the thrumming, I fill a bath and submerge. My skull resounds with a quick, dull tempo. Last week you still had hair, eyelashes, and a dog-eared self-help book by the call button. Last week you still took visitors. You gave me answers, mostly medical. Your private room was full of things you didn't use. Wall-mounted TV, polished black shoes, Jesus on the cross with an acrylic gut wound. I released bath water. Cold pushes through cracks and single glazing. I emerge, slowly, like sarsen stone. And to make a sort of a trilogy of it, this is another poem set in the bathroom. It's actually a poem that came out of the Ovale 5-word challenge, and it was included in the volume 10 5-word anthology. Landlocked. The silver patch will flake if I scrub enough. I lock the door, fill the bath, keep salt close. The craving increasing. Progression is slow until I wake up drowning, throat disappearing. Fins come before gills. I rush to flush myself away from this bedsit. Flap at taps, body twisting. Eyes slide sideways. No sound from this maw. 2 eyelids soundlessly fall. So this next poem is about my experience with counselling, which I haven't done in a while. But this is basically the same, it's more or less the same as what I'm doing now, except you don't get to challenge me on anything, and I don't have to pay you afterwards. Compulsion. Between visits, I pray and write gratitude lists. Between visits, I play hide and seek with God and invent resentments. On Saturdays, I sit with you for an hour. Different selves show up every week. Fearful self, controlling self, sleepy self. The self who's kicking nicotine. I try to tell you about the fight with Catherine, or visiting Dad in the ICU, or the night I climbed the railings of Wearmouth Bridge. You unpack the different parts and place them between us. Ask if I'm still in the room, if I'm feeling uncomfortable. I start to deflect and wonder why I pay to lie here when I could lie anywhere in the world. No, maybe not anywhere, but elsewhere, under some open, bright sky. So I think after all those slightly claustrophobic poems, I'll read one about travel. To avoid the washing up I get on the next flight. And seek God in Vondel Park, cry 4 times at the goth gig in Melkveg, and wait out front to meet the American singer. Back at the hostel, I have a 6-hour conversation with Anke. We take 2 breaks for tea and 1 for ice cream. And by the time she knows everything about me, I know 3 things about her. She likes to ask questions. She has never been in love. And she has trouble sleeping too. Talking in facts and parables, she speaks with such intimacy. Out of nowhere, she tells me, "You're a good person," and I believe her. I lie awake thinking about the performer, how she leaned her head against my chest moments after I met her. In the morning, I take a train that brings me to Rotterdam, though my ticket says Antwerp, and I keep asking, how do I get to Paris? I give up and walk west. There I find mozzarella sticks, warm milk, and God, disguised as a heron on a tree stump. I could live out my days like this, never washing another plate, taking the wrong train over and over again. So I haven't been able or willing, I suppose, to write for most of this year. But I started again the last couple of months, and the only thing I seem to be able to write are pantoums, which is this form where in quatrains the first and third line of each stanza is repeated in the third and fourth of the next, and so on. So every line is repeated. I'm sure there's something psychologically going on where I'm only able to write in a form that is constantly folding in on itself. But so I'll finish with one of these poems. In hopes of finding where it ends. Eyes closed, you're running an open palm along the intricate keloid trails on my arms. Smooth, even sweeps. Later, just fingertips tracing the terrain, left to right, line by line, along the intricate keloid trails on my arms. Patient as a translator scanning slowly through, tracking the terrain, left to right, line by line, then a dance of figure eights and curlicues. Patient as a translator scanning slowly through, I don't know what you could be learning. Then a dance of figure eights and curlicues, and I'm lulled into this feeling of refuge. I don't know what you could be learning, eyes closed. You're running an open palm, and I'm lulled into this feeling of refuge. Smooth, even sweeps. Later, just fingertips. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that, James. It was really powerful and really great to hear your work. Thanks again, and big gula bus. Our final poet for this evening is Robert Sullivan, who is a Maori poet whose tribal affiliations are to Ngāpuhi and Kāi Tahu. He is also Irish. His 7 collections of poetry include Captain Cook in the Underworld, published by Auckland University Press, Shout Ha to the Sky, Salt Publishing, and the best-selling Star Waka, which is Auckland University Press also. He has co-edited 3 major anthologies of Pacific and Maori poetry, and for a time led the creative writing programs at the University of Hawaii, Manoa and Manukau Institute of Technology, where until recently he was Deputy Chief Executive Maori. So, Robert, we're delighted to have you joining us this morning where you are. And yeah, take it away. Thank you very much.
Kia ora, Shauna, and kia ora, Paul, also, for organising a wonderful reading online. And greetings also to my fellow poets. Just awesome to hear your work. The first poem I'm going to read is called Maui Tosses the Hook. Maui is a New Zealand Māori culture hero, also a Polynesian culture hero. Tangaroa, make your sea lie smooth as greenstone. Aid the flight of my bone. Gentle your friend the summer wind, so he casts like a genealogy from the mouths of priests. Make the line taut, the hook unyielding. Pull it on, pull it strong. Make the great fish of Maui come. And that fish of Maui. Next poem is called Boxing Day, and it's set during a family reunion in the far north of Aotearoa, New Zealand. There's lots of beautiful white sand beaches up there, and it's where my family on my mother's side come from. Boxing Day. Grandad stays at home this morning on the hill, his gout's playing up something chronic. I take him up his feed in the can of Lion Red. He says he'll have the can and gives his kai to Uncle Tangi. Slightly later, we take the pickup full of kids to Paihia. There's kayaks, sea tricycles, and Kelly Tarleton's Shipwreck Museum. I play Uncle Ed's new Space Invaders game for a while, then cross the bridge to Waitangi on my own. I get right to the porch of the treaty house, but then I'm turned away by a guide who says it will cost me $5 to stay on the treaty grounds. Don't you know I'm Indigenous, I think, but I'm too stuffed to protest and leave. Later that night, we have a karaoke, and I play Trivial Pursuit with some cousins. I sang New York, New York, and Mac the Knife. The next poem is from a collection called Star Waka, and a waka is an ancestral vessel that brought our ancestors across the Pacific, a part of the world that's 5 parts land to 995 parts water. And that collection is envisaged as a fleet of poems, a fleet of waka, and 101 vessels. So this is Waka 99. I hope that you follow some of the referencing. There is a reference, for instance, to the South Island turned to wood. In New Zealand mythology, the South Island is seen as a waka, which held Maui. If waka could be resurrected, they wouldn't just come out from museum doors, smashing glass cases, revolving and sliding doors on their exit. They wouldn't just come out of mountains as if liquefied from a frozen state. The resurrection wouldn't just come about this way. The South Island turned to wood, waiting for the giant crew of Maui and his brothers. Bailers and anchors turned back to what they were when they were strewn about the country by Kupe and his relations. The resurrection would happen in the blood of the women and men, the girls and boys, who are blood relations of the crews whose veins touched the veins, who touched the veins of those who touched the veins, who touched the veins, who touched the veins of the women and men from the time of Kupe and before. The resurrection will come out of their blood. And then this next poem is called Honda Waka. Today, I surrendered the life of my Honda City to a wrecker in Penrose for $30. I bought it 7 years ago for $6,000. It has rust in the lower sills, rust around the side windows. On the warrant of fitness inspection sheet, it says, "This car has bad and a lot of rust." That car took me to Uncle Pat's funeral in Bluff. We stopped and gazed at Moiraki, the dream sky, on the way. A friend followed us in it on the way to National Women's for Temuera's birth. We were in her huge Citroen. We went to Otaki and Wellington in the Honda to visit family. The Honda took me to library school, perched next to Victoria Uni. I drove Grandad across the creek in the Honda at night after the family reunion bash. Temuera's first car seat was in the Honda. That Honda has seen a high percentage of my poetry. Now I have left it behind. And then this next poem is called Maui's Alternate Prayer. So the first poem I read to you was a chant where I imagine that Maui tosses the hook and fishes up the North Island. One of his other great feats was to slow the travels of the sun as it goes across the sky, and he did this by beating the sun. So this is an alternate prayer, Maui's alternate prayer, and I borrow an image from Sai by Stefan Mallarmé. Can the sun be drawn out without me beating him? Can a yellow ray soothe the earth like a cool cloth? Can the clouds sit on blue a while longer? Let them push white over the snow-flower mountains draping my island, flowers to make lays up for the eyes of my waka. Let the sun walk gently, longing for a good night, then he can glide. This next poem is called Captain Cook, a European culture hero from the 18th century. Captain Cook. Didn't we get rid of him? There are far too many statues, operas, and histories. If only I could be a brown Orwell, a Māori big bro, find every little caption card in every European museum and scrub it out, change the wording to, this was given to Captain Cook as a token of friendship and should be buried with him. Or, this was temporarily given to Captain Cook and would have been expected to be returned on his death. Or, well, actually, Captain Cook stole this. Or, the captain exchanged this for something vastly inferior in value. Ha ha for him. But even as an extra large bro, I suspect the lies are superglued. The empire that sent him to his death 3 times has its hero. And this next poem is called Ocean Birth. With the leaping spirits, we threw our voices past 3 kings to see, eyes wide open with ancestors. We flew air and water, lifted by rainbows, whales, dolphins thrashing sharks into birthways of the sea's labour, Rapa Nui born graven-faced above the waves, umbilical stone, Tahiti born from Waka, temple centre of the world, Hawaii called from liquid fire, the goddess Pele churning land from sea, born as mountains. Aotearoa on a grandmother's bone, Maui's blood to birth Leviathan. Samoa, Tonga, born before the names of the Sea of Islands, before Lapita clay turned to gourd, before we slept with Pacific tongues. Chant these births, Oceania, with your infinite waves, outrigged waka, bird feasts and sea feasts, Peruvian gold potatoes. Sing your births, Oceania. Hold your children to the sky and sing them to the Sky Father in the languages of your people. Sing your songs, Oceania. Pacific Islanders sing till your throats are stones heaped as temples on the shores for our ancestors' pleasure. PIs sing to remind wave, sand, tree, cliff, cave of the songs we left for the Moana Nui Akiwa. We left our voices here in every singing bird, trunks like drums, stones like babies, forests fed by our placentas. Every wave carries us here, every song to remind us we are skin of the ocean. And then this poem is called Karakia, which means prayer. And it was composed during a Māori writers' hui or conference. And each morning as we woke to start the day, we would form a prayer circle, a Cherokee prayer circle. We would give our breath to the four directions. And this was led by our chief, our rangatira, Bruce Stewart. So this is dedicated to him, karakia. I touch Papatūānuku, my earth mother. Give hands up to Ranginui, my sky father. Then beat both wings of the heart. Scull it down through the pelvis to a rosewater bowl filling with stones. Chance, angst, loneliness, failure. Dip hands in this, sprinkle heads in clarity. Pass the speech of people on. Blush and touch. Make love slowly. Be careful. We slide in a round of writhing, weeds that thrash a jive expressed in a loud way. I'm out of my circle. Persevere, beat your heart's wings. Fly out to greet them. Shout he to the ground. Shout ha to the sky. Through these veins people give and take, fine as those crossing a petal, floating on a bowl. Health to you, brother, we hongi. Health to you, sister, we kiss. Splash your paddles, breathe deeply, drink up. We've got a chant of unbroken tones to toast. A meeting on respected grounds. An open sound so pure it shakes the host. And this next poem is called Ahika, which means home fires. And its full name is Ahika, House of Ngāpuhi, which is my ancestral tribe. We light the poem and breathe out the growing flames. Ahika. This is out pukana, turn words to steam. This fish heart is a great lake on a skillet. Ahika, ahika, keep the fire. The sun's rays are ropes held down by Maui's brothers. They handed down ray by burning ray to each other every day. We keep the home fires burning every day. Mountains of our house are its pillars. I believe in the forces that raised them here. Ahika burnt onto summits, char in the land. Ahika dream, long, bright cloud, brilliant homeland. Ahika our life. Ahika carried by the tribe's forever story, firing every lullaby. Shadows shrink and our hands quiver as we speak. Ahika sing fire, scoop embers in the childhood sun, stare into molten shapes and see people, building, sailing. See them in the flames of our land. See them in this forever light. No tears, only fire for Ahika. No weeping, only hangi pits. No regrets, just forgiveness and a place for the fire. It's our song to sing. Ahika, got to keep singing the shadows away. Ha! And then another Captain Cook poem, also set in the 18th century during the Endeavour voyage. And this is voiced in the star Venus, which of course one of the objectives of the Endeavour expedition was scientific, and that was to observe the transit of Venus, which was in Tahiti. Here we go. Oh, and you need to know that this was an oratorio, so it's quite operatic in style. I am Venus, the morning star, placed to guide you through the shades far toward the southern land, the land of the cloud that hides me now, Aotearoa of white Alps and deep harbours, a land you'll be proud to call your own. I am Venus, the guiding light and mistletoe of the ancients. I am the Aphrodite of your spirit guide, the man of lyres and song. Orpheus will do you no wrong on your long argosy, so go far, James, and discover your South Sea's greatness. Onward, James, and remember me as a goddess on your transit. Let this trip be the transit of night, not the loss of a faint speck in the wilderness of sky. Go on, James, and journey for the discovery of great peoples. Avoid the misery of ignorance in sermons, James. Look to history for harmony. Set out well as your acts precede you. Harmony, James. Be harmonious with these people. I am their star too. I know their mana, their skill in crossing oceans. And your anger, James. Beware your anger. The Pacific peoples are patient to a fault. They have followed me like pilgrims across the heavens for thousands of years. But remember, you are the new ones here. Take my warning to heart and not to muskets. There. And then this poem is called The Crackling Page. It's so short, I should really know it. The Crackling Page. My poetry is like a fire. If I close my mouth, I will die. And then finally, I'll read a poem called Aroha Nui. Aroha Nui. Big love, that's what it means. Aroha Nui means huge love. Aroha Nui Rawa means very huge love. Aroha Nui Rawake means bigger, very huge love. Aroha Nui Rawake Tonu means bigger, enduring, very huge love. Aroha Nui Rawake Tonu Atu means biggest, enduring, hugest love, which are some of the lengths and times of our longing. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was really beautiful. And I'm very lucky to have heard all the readings tonight, as I'm sure everybody watching is very grateful for your readings. So you've just heard, beginning this evening, James O'Leary, then Noir Al-Sadir, and Robert Sullivan. We're now going to have a short question and answer session where I will ask our readers for this evening some questions. Just before I do that, I'd just like to leave you know that you can find all of the poets' full biographies on the Ovale Winter Warmer website. That's just the Ovale website. And also Ovale relies heavily on donations, and it's been a tough year for the arts. So we would be absolutely delighted if you could donate what you can. There should be a donate button somewhere around your screen if you're watching this live. And if you're watching this in the future, then you can find that on the Ovale website also. So now I would like to ask our poets some questions. And the first question I would like to ask you all is, who are your favorite living poets, and what is it about their work that maybe appeals to you? So James, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know what it is about that question that makes me afraid that I'll forget every poem I've ever read. But there's two that come to mind because I've been reading them recently and I've seen them read. One is Matthew Dickman. And there's a brutal directness to his poems. You know, he's unafraid to look at the ugliness in people, and but there's always empathy within it. You know, so it creates that space for some amount of beauty. You know, that he takes this compassionate stance. And the other person who comes to mind is Abigail Parry. she has a collection, Jinx, and it just blows me away whenever I read this. There's just the sounds in her work, just the the music of it almost puts me into this kind of altered state, whether I'm reading it or listening to it. I'm just so impressed by what you can do with the sounds of words together. So they're my two.
Great, thanks. And Noir, I'll pose the same question to you. Who are your favorite living poets, and what maybe about their work it is that appeals to you?
I'm always changing my favorite poets, so maybe I'll just go for who I've been reading very recently. I've been rereading an all-time favorite poet of mine, the Brazilian poet Adélia Prado, and I love the way she is so in touch with her interior and really allows her writing to follow the way her mind moves. It's so intimate to be let into someone's thoughts and emotions as they have them without transformation for an imagined reader. And I also really admire the intimacy in Claudia Rankine's work, and her latest book, Just Us, is it has some poetry in it. It also is has prose, and she really writes in the form that the thinking and feeling demands. And I admire that as well, to be able to not try and pour whatever you're thinking and feeling into a pre-existing form, but to actually let the material determine the form you write in. And that's a really incredible book and relevant. So I'd say those two.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, sorry, it is a pretty intense question. It's your favorite living poets, but like you said, maybe not that exactly, just ones you're interested in or have read recently. So great, thank you so much for that. And finally, Robert, I'll pose the same question to you.
Oh, thanks, Noir, for taking some pressure off the question. I'd suggest Kāi Tahu, the New Zealand Māori poet. She won a Booker Prize for The Bone People. She's not as well known as a poet, and I particularly admire her collection Moiraki Conversations, which voices the land, voices every little creature. It's got an onticality about it that I really admire. Gosh, there's an American poet, Joy Harjo, who I admire very much, and her spirit, and the way she voices the dreams of her people through her own experience. She's such a brave poet, and I deeply admire her. Great,
thank you so much. Super. So another question that I pose to you is, with life in lockdown, how has COVID affected your writing practice? And I apologize in advance if any of you are sick and tired of talking about COVID or how it has affected you. But unfortunately, it's something we're all dealing with, and I think everybody's kind of curious of how everybody else is coping, especially with in creating. So, James, would you like to answer first?
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting with writers. It seems to, from what I've heard, it seems to go to one extreme or the other. I mentioned that I didn't write at all for several months, and I suppose I by default I can be kind of hard on myself and get into I should be and all this kind of stuff, and a lot of the time that guilt and that sort of harsh thinking can just not be useful. So at a certain point, I just gave myself permission or I just allowed myself to not write, you know. I just kind of took away the judgment from it. I did a lot of reading, actually, which I think helped for when I eventually came back to writing recently. So I suppose especially early on, it put so much overthinking that it, you know, there was very little room for anything else for a while, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that resonates with a lot of people. I agree that it seems to be one way or the other that everybody's saying it goes. And Noir?
I am afraid of jinxing it, especially as in New York, we're moving back into lockdown, it seems. But I have been able to write. It's been, I'm pretty reclusive anyway, so it didn't change my life. I mean, it changed my life dramatically, but I already was used to being home. So it was an okay adjustment. But I've been able to write and be productive somewhat. I don't know.
That's really nice to hear. And yeah, I hope, I don't want to jinx it either, but I hope it all is well over there at the moment. And finally, Robert?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being productive. I must admit, even though we haven't experienced such a severe lockdown in New Zealand, I've had other things going on. Like we've relocated from Auckland to south of the South Island, and so I'm just grateful that we managed to get through that relocation before lockdown hit. Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to the summer that's coming up for us.
Very good. I am afraid we have a long old wait for the summer here. But luckily we have nice festivals like this one online that might make the dark days go by a little quicker and bring a bit more joy into our lives, as your readings did. So I would like to thank once more our readers for this evening: James O'Leary, Noir Al-Sadir, and Robert Sullivan. Again, you can find their bios, their full bios, and more about their work on the Ovale website and the Winter Warmer program. And I'm sure you can find their work online also. And the festival continues tomorrow. There are events throughout the day, and you can also find them on the Winter Warmer program. So thank you very much for everyone for tuning in and for watching online. And I wish you all a very good morning for you, Robert, afternoon for you, Noir, and good night to James and everybody here on GMT time in Ireland. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.